Just wanting to say good afternoon again for everyone who joined us for today's session. I hope again you've had a chance to grab some lunch or a refreshment as we begin our session for today. My name is Natasha Prashad, and I am a program coordinator with the Anti-Racism and Cultural Diversity Office. And we are immensely excited to have you all join us today for our second Restore at U of T clinic for the year 2021. And as we understand and share how we can advance our collective responsibility to fight racism in all its forms. The Restore at U of T program is a series of curated community spaces that was launched last year to address the impacts of racism through restorative activities. This session will be recorded, so please be noted of that. We also wish to acknowledge that whatever city or neighborhood that you may be tuning into this event from, that we are all ultimately living and working on Indigenous land. And through the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, we've been gifted with a pathway to acknowledge the truths and the legacy of colonialism that continues to impact First Peoples here on Turtle Island. And more importantly, the actions that we can take towards valuing peace, friendship, and mutual respect with Indigenous nations, both in our professional and personal lives, even in our lives as students. And with all community gatherings in a virtual environment, it's important for us to set our guidelines for engagement, not only with ourselves, but also with each other. And as such, because this event is being held on the Zoom platform, we at ArcDoor are mindful of the security concerns while using online platforms. We strive to create spaces where accountability, respect, and inclusion are integral. And as such, if there are any major or egregious disruptions that interrupts the host's ability to keep control of the Zoom platform, Jody Glean Mitchell or a member of the ArcDoor team will immediately close the session and the session will be rescheduled. If there are any inappropriate verbal or written communications, individuals will be removed immediately by a member of the ArcDoor team. I would now like to introduce our wonderful and awesome collaborators and facilitators for today. Allison Hill is the curator of Restore, along with her colleagues Jhanelle Peters and Terry Griffin. Jhanelle is a mental health clinician for the Toronto Raptors and is a registered psychotherapist qualifying with the College of Registered Psychotherapists of Ontario. As well, she's a professional member of the Ontario Society of Registered Psychotherapists. Jhanelle also owns her own practice based in Toronto entitled Jhanelle Peters Psychotherapy. Terry Griffin is an educator and the principal of a K-12 parochial academy in Florida. She has served as an associate superintendent, academic dean at Johns Hopkins University. Her areas of interest include minority serving institutions with an emphasis on K-12 urban education, in-service pedagogical development, racism and diversity, fundraising and philanthropy, and K-12 educational leadership. So without further ado, I'd like to pass it along to Allison to begin our session.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for spending hopefully your lunch hour with us. We have put together a presentation today that is packed full with information, and we definitely want to hear from you what you think and answer any questions you might have. My name is Allison Hill. I am accompanied by Terry Griffin and Jhanelle Peters, and we are going to be breaking down two concepts today and closing with a grounding exercise. Next slide, please. Our intention today is to examine two theories in allyship: unconscious bias and critical consciousness. So if you'd like to share in the chat box with me, are these terms that you have heard of, or are you familiar with them in any context at all? I was able to learn a lot of them, a lot about both of these concepts through preparing for this today. And I'm really excited to get into the meat and potatoes of what these concepts mean and how we can apply them to our daily lives in a real mindful way. I think what's exciting about this series is that we are not just talking about allyship on a macro level, but a micro level, right? Everybody wants to be, what does that actually mean? Everybody says, oh, you have to be nice to people who don't have the same circumstances as you. And maybe you already do feel like you're a nice person, but how can we really examine these concepts and understand how we can implement them in our lives so that we can impact other people's lives and also open up our community to this new or relatively new information? Okay, so I see here that some of us are familiar with unconscious bias. Great. Well, then there's going to be a lot of opportunities for here today for us to learn. And if you have any questions that come up, I will be monitoring the chat. Please slide them in there and then we will get those questions answered. Next slide, please. We're going to begin with Jhanelle.
All right, good afternoon. I was like, good morning, but no, we're in afternoon. So we're going to start with like what you guys had mentioned. Most of you have heard of unconscious bias, and we're going to take some time to dig into what it is, where it stems from, and how it really applies to allyship. So you see here, we say it's an unintended people preference that is formed by our socialization, personal experiences, and representation of people based on our social influences. The way to wrap all that up is it's our brain's way of filtering things very quickly, right? And we filter it based off of what we know, what we've seen, how we've lived. So quick question for you guys in the chat before we move to the next slide is, when you think about unconscious bias, is it a good thing, a bad thing, or both? So for those of you who know what it is and then looking at this definition, what do you think? Good, bad, or both? I'm gonna give you some time. Good and bad. Okay. All right.
Okay, it looks like it could be both for a lot of people.
Okay.
Good and bad, depending on the circumstances. Good and bad. And I'm sure there are sides to this. I'm excited to see how we get into it.
So next slide. So the key word in that slide before was it's our unintended people preference, right? So because it sits below our conscious level, you're not actually really thinking about it at times. It kind of comes together quickly based off of all the things that are around you. And what I want to share with you is this little image that can help put it together. So it's an automatic response. It's how we do something very quickly. We don't even think about it, right? It just kind of happens. And when it becomes a challenge or when it becomes something that could shift to the bad side is when it's based off of a stereotype or an attitude that implies some type of negative judgment, right? So when we think about how quickly we decide something or how quickly we kind of group something into a categorization, whether it's age, gender, religion, even something as simple as somebody's name, just seeing it, right? That happens very, very quickly. And when it becomes the bad version of an unconscious bias is when it leads to a negative judgment. And especially when we're talking about the concept of allyship is when it could have its impact on a disadvantaged group. So next slide. So here, I want you to kind of just, take a moment and just read the definition that we have here, right? So it's attitudes or stereotypes that unknowingly alter our perception or understanding of our experiences, thereby affecting our behavior, interactions, and decision-making. Meaning, if we have an unconscious bias, it's going to, a negative unconscious bias at that, it's going to impact how we make our decision, right? It's going to impact how we interact with somebody else. And I think the other piece that I want to share with everybody is that we all have this. This is not something that is to a specific gender or race or ethnicity. Everybody has an unconscious bias. Everybody has a way that their brain makes quick decisions of what is similar and what is different. Next slide. All right, so we're gonna do a little activity here, a little bit of fun on your lunch break in the chat. So I want you to kind of take a look at these and take some time and figure out and just share with us in the chat, how would you group this? How would you group what you see on the screen? Okay. We've got some answers coming in. I'll let Allison take it away when they come up.
So I'm seeing a lot of by shape, by size, shape, shapes with angles, shapes without. Okay, critical thinking here, shapes.
Okay, so it looks like everybody is kind of figuring out what they want to group it into. And a lot of it is shape, colors. We see like different dimensions or angles. And before I even told you what you were going to do with this, your brain quickly, automatically started figuring out, well, what is this? How am I going to section this off? How am I going to categorize it? That is exactly what unconscious bias looks like. It is automatic. You don't even recognize that you're doing it sometimes until somebody points it out. And this is the same concept that happens if you were to imagine that these shapes were people, right? When you're around people, you kind of do the same thing. Unconsciously, you group things, and it's not a bad thing, right? You group things by similarity, by difference, based off of, our lived experiences and things that you've seen, as we mentioned earlier. All right. That was kind of interesting to see how you guys grouped that. I liked it. Next slide. So here, while you may consciously reject negative images associated with disadvantaged groups, so we're telling ourselves, that's not me. I would never look at somebody like that. I would never put somebody into that group. I'm very aware, right? We're immersed in a culture where those stereotypes or those negative judgments or those images come up all the time. So you're obviously always having to be like, nope, wait, it's not that. I have to tell myself that this is how I'm going to respond. This is how I'm going to act. So this is what we mean when we're talking about the fact that it's something that you don't recognize that you're doing. And this is why conversations like this are so important, because they really help you take that unconscious thought and bring it to the conscious level, play with it a bit, think about it, and be like, all right, here's how we're going to put it back. So where do you think one's unconscious bias may stem from? We talked about it being through worldly views, life experiences, but where do you think somebody's unconscious bias can stem from?
I'm seeing family, culture, experiences, trauma.
Okay.
Upbringing, family, friends, education, what people learn in school and educational settings, early attachment, the media,
big one.
Media and literature. And even just to add to this conversation, I remember being like 13 or 14 and subscribing to, I don't think it was like Teen Vote, it was like 17. That was the magazine. And I remember thinking, wow, I have to be Caucasian and skinny. And not to be in this magazine, but to be in life.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot of ideas of how that's how I was supposed to move through the world. And I think for a long time, that probably sat on my subconscious.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Just think about the environments and settings that you grew up in, whether it's your school. Were you the minority in your school? Did you look different from somebody? Did you feel like I had to do this, and subconsciously found yourself at different stores or dressing a certain way because you're like, well, I don't want to be the different person. I want to be very similar. I want to feel like when we looked at those shapes, I could be grouped into that picture that I see over there to the right.
For sure.
So I really like that. Okay, so we definitely talked about, and you guys touched on some really key and fundamental ways that our unconscious bias kind of stems from, or where it stems from. Okay, next slide. So here's where the problem exists, right? When a single encounter with an individual may hold an unconscious bias for an entire group, right? So that one experience that you might have with, somebody of different ethnicity or a race or a gender literally makes you feel like, oh, well, that's how everybody acts then, right? That's how now I'm going to apply that thought to every single person. And when we talk about allyship, this can cloud our judgment. This can cloud, because we said unconscious bias is how we categorize something quickly and how we then make an action, right? Or what we do. So if it's clouded, then it's going to become a problem if we're trying to support somebody. We're trying to assist, we're trying to be an ally. And that's why it's so important to kind of check it, hold on to it, and be like, wait a minute, let's bring you to the conscious level. What am I doing? What am I saying here? Is it true? Or what am I going off of? And with that, the solution is doing exactly what you're doing here. So this is the first part. We're literally taking the time to be like, let me dig into that unconscious and bring it to the top. And we're learning about what it looks like. And then comes the unlearning and the relearning and really taking the time to reflect and activate it. So it's one thing to have these conversations, but you really have to activate and do it, right? And think about one of the ways of doing it and putting that solution together is what does your network look like, right? What does your friend circle look like? Where do you go? Do you see other people? Do you hang out with other people that could help remove some of those negative judgment, right? Help remove that negative unconscious bias because now you're learning the truth. All right, the next slide. So we've been focusing on what you can do as an individual. Makes sense. How do you bring that to the forefront? But it doesn't take just one person, right? So when we think about an individual, we think about, organization, whether it's an institution like your school, whether it's your workplace, it really does take a lot of people coming together to shift our mindsets and this unconscious bias so we can all be, the best allies you can possibly be, right? And, most of those we talked about, but the one that I really want to focus on is the cultural humility and why that piece is so important in this topic. And that's because cultural humility is really taking the time to explore. You might have heard of, cultural competency. I like to say humility instead because humility means that you're always learning. You're always open to exploring. You will never know the ins and out of somebody else. So having cultural humility can help when we want to remove unconscious bias because we're always open to exploring and learning. And this is what part of that solution looks like. All right. The next slide. So in order to make other people comfortable, we need to make ourselves uncomfortable with unconscious bias, helping each of us feel comfortable with change. And really what that means is we need to take the time to bring our unconscious bias to the forefront. Think about, wait a minute, where did that come from, right? Think about all the things that you said in the chat. Is that because of my family? Is that because of, the media or what other influence that made me think this way? Why did I categorize that person this way? And it might be uncomfortable for a bit, and that's okay, because discomfort is really what's going to help you, deal with change. It's what's going to help all of us deal with change. And we can go to the next slide. And, I think as we wrap it up, this leads perfectly to Terry's piece, and I'm gonna let Allison take it away of what that looks like.
Beautiful. And then we're going to reintroduce you, Jhanelle, at the end to close it all together in our grounding exercise. And we're going to slide in Terry into this conversation. Oh, you're still muted.
In the world. Thank you. All right, can you guys hear me now? Thumbs up. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Terry Griffin, and I am here with you today to piggyback on what Ms. Peters was talking about earlier, which is unconscious bias, also referred to as implicit bias, and we're going to take a look at critical consciousness. So if you guys can take me to the next slide. I think I see it here. All right, so critical consciousness focuses on achieving an in-depth understanding of the world, allowing for the perceptions and exposures of social and political contradictions, and includes taking action against the oppressive elements in one's life that are illuminated by that understanding. I'm just gonna let that sink in for a moment because there's a lot of big words here and it's a lot to take in. So when we start talking about developing a critical consciousness or critical conscience, what we're talking about here is being able to take a look at the world around us and understand the areas of injustice, specifically social injustice. And I think we can all agree that in the United States, as well as in Canada or all around the world, we are witnessing some type of injustice. So if you guys can, in the chat, can you guys share with me what are some of those issues that you all consider to be injustice? And that can give us a good foundation as to our understanding as to what injustice is.
I think the first one that kind of jumps out at me that almost kicked off a lot of these conversations is police brutality and the way that that impacts a lot of minority groups.
Mm-hmm.
I see here in the chat access to education, criminalizing drug addiction, the concentration camps in China against Muslims,
Mm-hmm.
inequity in healthcare access.
Very good. The way allyship works with critical conscious is that they're almost married together. You cannot be a good ally without understanding or without developing a critical conscious, which means that you're looking deeper and you're seeking understanding as to why oppression exists, right? Who are the individuals that are experiencing the oppression? And then you come alongside them, like we've talked about yesterday, and we're talking about now with allyship. With allyship, you stand beside, you stand behind, but never in front. But in order to be a good ally, you have to have an understanding of the oppression so that you can speak not only intelligently, but you can understand the reasons why individuals act the way that they do if they have been oppressed. Let's go to our next slide. So when it says here, critical consciousness, the foundation. So we live in an unequal world where oppression exists. And I like all of the chats that you guys mentioned here about, dealing with the concentration camps there in China. Inequity in our healthcare system and our access. That's something that's not exclusive to Canada. It's also being present here in the United States. Education, foster care to the prison pipeline. Like this is like, there's a lot that we are just, as I'm taking a look at this, there's so much to explore when you start talking about, there are things that are happening to people in our communities. There are things that are happening to people in our nation. There are things that are happening to people all around the world. And if you're not present, if you're not mindful of the fact that there are terrible things happening and people are being oppressed, you can not only miss it, but you cannot be a good ally. So it says here, for number 2, it says, we are the ones who must liberate and transform our world. So again, like critical consciousness, you're talking about what can I do to help, right? Christians may know of the story of the Good Samaritan. And I think in different groups, there are stories that talk about an individual that decides that they're going to give of themselves despite the actions of other people, be it the people on the road, they're the people in society. So when you're talking about developing a critical consciousness, you're saying, you know what, there's something wrong here. I see something is wrong. Not just I see something is wrong, but I'm going to take the steps towards what can I do to help this community? What can I do to help the world? What can I do to liberate this person from that oppression? And that's how it gets you into the liberation, and support gets you into the area of allyship. Can you go to the next slide? Let's see here. Okay, so it says here, to do this, we must recognize our part in the world and the oppression. Engage in ongoing dialogue. Engaging in ongoing dialogue is very important, because sometimes when we start talking about the unconscious bias, we bring understanding to the things around us. And then we use, be it our prior knowledge, our implicit or our unconscious bias, to understand what we are seeing. And sometimes it's necessary to talk to somebody else. Am I understanding this correctly? Am I missing something? Because the important thing about being an ally is that these individuals or the individual, or you can even be yourself, you are experiencing oppression as a result of some type of misunderstanding. So when you're working towards being an ally, you want to be clear and to avoid like using the right language, understanding terminology so that you can rightfully advocate for the individual and in hopes liberating them from the oppression that they are under. And it says here, break down the power structures. Let me fix my screen here. Yeah, hold on. Okay, see it better. Okay, break down the power structures and the math that frames our lives. And it says here, rehumanize our relationship with others. Now, I want to focus on the rehumanizing our relationships with others. How many of you all watch the news? I think we can give a thumbs up. Okay, we watch the news. Now, when we watch the things that are happening on the news, how many of you feel that you can connect with the events that are happening in the news? Thumbs up if you feel as though that you connect. Thumbs down, it's too abstract. I don't understand what's happening there on the news. Thumbs up, thumbs down, too abstract, too far away, proximity alone. Okay, I see it both. Yeah, I see it.
Both.
Okay, I see a bit of both. The thing about critical consciousness is that when you're seeking for deeper understanding, it gives you begin to humanize the individuals that are being oppressed. And it kind of goes into the word empathy. I'm beginning to understand, and I want to be a part of the change, right? So now I have a better understanding. I'm seeing the injustice. I'm not only seeing the person, but I'm seeing the injustice, be it the laws, be it members of society, be it organizations. I'm beginning to understand the bigger picture. Now, critical consciousness is not something that you just develop overnight. It's a deliberate action that you take to become informed, right? And then once you become informed, then you're positioned to take action, right? And that's where allyship comes in. When you're talking about rehumanizing your relationships with others, people should not be identified by their oppression. People should not just be identified just by the color of their skin. Previously, we talked about colorblind theory and how people, we don't want to see color. But when you're starting to rehumanize people, you're saying, I see you. I see you in your color. I see the oppression, but I see you as a person that can succeed. I see you as a person who should live. And I see you as a person who should be given all the opportunities as everybody else. How can I help you in carrying this burden, this oppression that you have? And better yet, how can I help you in eliminating that burden or that oppression? Let's go to the next slide.
We have a comment here in the chat that says, often we are socialized to relate and empathize with white people's stories. And I think that's worth noting, because where we get our information from sometimes, the people who might be curating that information, who might be sharing their perspectives, might not be the same as ours. So I think this is very important in developing a critical consciousness of like, where am I getting my information? And is that information being filtered to me from somebody who might have an agenda? Or are there people who are giving fair and open examples of what everybody is experiencing and not just one group?
There's a phrase I've heard used before, that we live in this Eurocentric society. And in education, we talk about, young people being able to understand, like kind of like the European way, the foundation of our curriculums and our learnings here at school. It starts off with that, right? But then now there is this we're in a place right now where we're beginning to identify people, and we're saying this group, or we're saying that group, and what's it called? These people from this place. And now we're saying that we see you and we want to be able to include you and curate experiences in our curriculum, in our workplaces, where you can feel belong and we can understand and learn your story. Going back again to critical consciousness, we understand that it is necessary to go deep, right? Many of us have very surface understandings and even relationships with people, and for that reason, we're not suited to have deeper relationships with individuals. Not having deeper relationships at times can dehumanize people, right? And it's just like, oh yeah, they're just over there, or yeah, they have that problem. But when you start thinking deeply about who they are and how you can help them and why their experience is the way that it is, you can be a better ally for them. So let's go ahead to our next slide. It says here, is that right? Yeah, let's discuss. In what areas of your life can you make space for more critical consciousness?
We'd love to hear from you all in the chat. I think one kind of light one for me is I started to watch films from different cultures, and not just the ones that Hollywood makes, but films from different countries made by those creators. I know with like COVID, I've just kind of had more time to watch TV, but because I don't necessarily work in a place where I can get a lot of worldviews, I'm starting to look into the arts of different communities to see how they express themselves. That's how I'm working on my critical consciousness.
That's good. That's good.
Okay, we have a question here. Can you speak to how we can rehumanize our relationships or even be an ally if we don't have direct contact with the oppressed group? And I think that's actually a good question that if you have an answer and you want to put that in the chat and share your perspective, we'd love to hear it. But from Terry and Jhanelle, how do you think that you can diversify the information you get if you're not in direct contact with an oppressed group?
Well, I'll start off. When it comes to rehumanizing people, it's no longer just seeing them as an object. You understand? Where they're having this problem over there, right? Instead, these are humans, they're individuals just like me, right? Who could possibly, I could possibly have a situation like this, right? And then here they are, and they're having this terrible experience. We have to start putting ourselves in people's shoes and getting a sense of, well, why are they experiencing that way? And that's where the critical consciousness comes in. It's like, well, let me go ahead and dig deeper, right? When I asked originally at the top about, when you watch the news, like how do you connect with that information? A conversation with the high schoolers, and they're kind of like, oh yeah, it's those people from like way over there. And you're like, way over there? That's Orlando. I'm here in Tampa. Way over there, that's 45 minutes away, right? So there's a disconnect, and because of that disconnect, the things that they're going through may not, you don't feel as though that you're going through those things. So how do you rehumanize your relationships or rehumanize people? By better understanding them. Better understanding them is the best way. And also finding ways to be able to connect with them to improve their lives, right? The things that are going on in people's lives, they have meaning, and they cannot be excused away because you're not going through it. So those individuals who advocate for the marginalized or for the oppressed, they're saying, I see your humanity, And as a result of seeing your humanity, I want to be able to use the privilege that I have in order to help you. And privilege is not just money. Privilege is not just the color of your skin. Privilege could be education as well, right? Your privilege could be your gender, right? So to rehumanize an individual means that you're seeking understanding, you're becoming empathetic, and you're looking at ways to better understand them, who they are, and not their circumstance. Ms. Peters, you have something?
I think I loved how you summed that up. I think the only thing I would add to it is, where you can get that, like we're talking about the news, if you're looking at the news and you're like, this is one perspective, well, how do I get this perspective of the person that's being discussed on the news, from that group that's being discussed on the news? And it could be where we use social media to our advantage and really taking the time to be like, well, let me hear it from the mouth of somebody who is actually experiencing it, right? Let me hear how they perceive what's happening. And that could also give you a way to better understand, like you were saying, Terry, how to walk in their shoes, how that would feel like. And then picture myself going through the same thing. What would that mean for me or somebody close to me to have to experience something similar to that? So that's a way of using social media to your advantage, so you can connect with the wider group if you don't have direct contact with them.
Mm-hmm. And sorry, to add to that, and I'll slide it back to you, Terry. I also like to, when I'm seeking information, let's say I hear a story and let's say it's on CBC. What I like to also do is like go to the group that they are discussing, go to their communities, maybe their social communities, their news sources, like those sort of things, and maybe hear from them how they're telling that very story, right? Because sometimes, well, more often than not, especially with social media, there are community groups who are speaking on public platforms like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. And yes, it does take a little bit of work. We all have things to do, and maybe you don't have time to research everything. There's a lot of issues going on in the world, but the things that do spark an interest in you, maybe look at, okay, who's telling the story, and are they telling their story, or are they telling somebody else's story? And let's try to get the experiences from the people who are living the experiences.
Yeah, well, I really like that, Allison. The thing about critical consciousness, or developing a critical consciousness to come to be a better ally, it requires a certain level of discipline, right? In that there is an intentional action that you're going to take to kind of reevaluate your thinking and being open-minded, almost like being present and aware to the things that are going on around you, right? I think there's a phrase that we've used before, like, I'm living in my own bubble, right? Like, what's happening to this person is not necessarily happening to me, and I'm kind of in my own world. The problem is that for individuals who are part of an oppressed or a marginalized group, there is significant discomfort in their world, right? They're experiencing things that you are not necessarily experiencing in your world. And more times than not, they are, they're concerned, and they just don't know how to get out of their world. They don't know how to get out of their bubble. And that's when we're talking about the critical consciousness and then becoming an ally. As an ally, you have an opportunity to be able to liberate them from those things that are weighing them down, those things that are oppressing to them. And the oppression could be laws. The oppressions could be policies that are in place that eliminates or works to remove them, right? What can you do, right? Now, you may say, I don't want to have to, I can't stand beside this person because this person is far away. Like, I don't know. I don't have the proximity towards them. But what could you do as far as with the arts? Or what could you do as far as communicating by a letter? What could you do in better understanding the laws that are being created around, certain policies that make it? And how can you advocate for these individuals since they are unable to advocate for themselves? right? So when you develop a social consciousness, you're saying that I am looking deeper into understanding the world that this person who is human like me is a part of. And then I am going to work towards taking some action, right, to help them in a productive way. Because I think as I transfer it back over to Ms. Peters, we can think that we're helping and then find out that we're not really helping at all. So that's what we say when we talk about developing a critical consciousness, it takes time. And even to be a better ally or to be an ally or to engage in allyship, it does take time. But when you finally get to a place that you are able to be an ally, understand that oppressed and marginalized groups are waiting, and they're waiting with open arms to be able to get the support that you're able to that you're able to receive. We all want a listening ear. We all want a helping hand. We all want someone that we can and walk together with. And when you start thinking about someone who is utilizing critical consciousness and then taking the proactive action to be an ally, you are creating a safe space for the individual who felt as though before there was no safe space for them.
Okay, let's slide to our grounding exercise. That's next.
All right, so we gave you a lot to pack in just now, and we want to make sure that we can kind of funnel it back in, and you're like, okay, well, you gave us all this stuff. What do I do? Where do I start? And it's recognizing that we all have both an unconscious bias and, like Terry was speaking about, recognizing that your critical conscious is something that you have to be aware of, right? And taking the time to have conversations like this is the starting point. This is the learning. So for all of you who are wondering, where do I start? You started, right? Give yourself a little bit of credit. This is the start by coming here and having this conversation. Another thing that's really interesting that you can do is take an IAT test. It's on Harvard's website. You just type in IAT, and it really is interesting to see, where does my unconscious bias sit, which can then help you, be more critical about what you do going forward. And then the next thing that I want to share is what I like to call the platinum rule. It's how we treat others, and just really basic in the way that they want to be treated. So the next few slides will talk about asking, respecting, and connecting. So we can go to the next slide. So it's taking the time, and this is how we get more aware of what somebody's going through, how we get kind of in their shoes a bit more. So just, in your thoughts when you're speaking with someone, ask first, do you mind if how would you feel about, and it doesn't always have to be you speaking to somebody directly. If you're watching something on the news, maybe even thinking about, what would I ask somebody that's going through this? What would this look like? And then respect, if you can talk to somebody directly, it's actively listening, and do not interrupt, don't dismiss, and don't form your response while they're talking. This is how we make sure that we don't bring up our unconscious bias, or we bring up what we think is happening first. We take the time to be like, wait a minute, unconscious bias, you sit right there. We categorize this all wrong. We have to now, figure out what's happening here and taking into context what's being told to us. And then connect. And a way that you can ensure that your negative unconscious bias does not come up is by taking the time to paraphrase what somebody is saying, because then it stops you from jumping to your categorization, your filtering that you did earlier. So it's like, oh, so I'm clear. Here's what this looks like. And it's these little steps towards, taking away what we do with our unconscious bias, what we do with our critical conscious, that really helps us become a better ally. And at the end of the day, an ally is an action word, right? It's what you do to help somebody, what you do to support somebody. And if you remember these things that we're talking about today, it really will help shift you in a direction to actually action and help somebody in a way that supports them, especially when we're dealing with a disadvantaged group. So hopefully that helped kind of channel in what you can do in this moment, because I know at times it feels like a lot at first, but the biggest takeaway today is to realize that this is a start by you paying attention to your unconscious bias and your critical conscious, and just reframing however this resonated with you is where it all begins.
Thank you, Jhanelle. And just to conclude, I heard a quote actually in one of our classes a while back that said, imagine a screw going into a wall 30 times, right? Those 30 turns. If you want to pull that screw out and you just yank it out, it's going to cause a lot of damage. You actually have to go back and unscrew that screw 30 times. And when we talk about things sitting on our conscience and things being like so deeply entrenched within us, that's not something that changes very quickly or like just like that. Even if you want it to, even if you know it's in there and it doesn't, you know, it's like a little prickly, it's been in there for such a long time that it does really take a lot of conscious steps of questioning yourself over it. And what I love about these conversations is just remind you that as an ally, it's not 1, 2, 3 perfect ally. That's not what it is. Even as we are presenting today, we do a lot of research, come to understand even where our unconscious biases are showing up. So we are all learning and taking these steps forward. But I think it's important, especially for our generation, to understand that somebody did this work before us for us to even be able to have conversations like this. So even if it might not feel like you're doing like a tremendous amount or you're not getting it right, we're still all moving the needle a little bit further to make everybody's life around us more comfortable, because that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for a space where everybody feels heard, everybody feels safe and understood, and not just one larger group that's overlording everything. We are making space for us all to live out an optimal life. And that is really what you're contributing to when you're learning how to be an effective ally. So thank you all for coming. Really appreciate having these conversations with you. Thank you for being so open in the chat. And I'm going to hand it back to Natasha to wrap.
Thank you. Thank you so much to Allison, to Jhanelle, to Terry, to all of you who joined us today for our session. I have to say that you've really sort of left us all with some food for thought and even some tips and sort of skills and knowledge that as students we can implement in our lives, and we can sort of have as part of the spaces that we engage in as students, when we have class, when we're talking with one another, when we're with our colleagues, and we can take with us as we even graduate our programs and enter the career fields, and we enter whatever professional field we'd like to be in. So thank you again for everyone for joining us. On the screen, you'll see some events that are upcoming from the Anti-Racism and Cultural Diversity Office. Specifically for Black History Month, we'll be holding a symposium on February 8th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. As well, we'll also be having a film screening of a documentary entitled Ninth Floor on February 12th from 12 to 2 p.m. As well, in the month of March, we will be hosting our International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination Conference on March 19th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And more information on the session itself and the events can be found on our website, as well as other information regarding the programming that we have throughout the year. I'd also like to make mention, and perhaps it's already in the chat, of an evaluation form that is going along. We really appreciate your feedback and wanting to figure out what worked, what didn't work in sessions, and really we take and value that feedback to be able to improve and be able to respond to whatever changes or needs you may have as students of the U of T community. So please take some time to fill out the survey. And finally, again, just wanting to say a big thank you to our collaborators for today. And I hope as students you're able to take some time to refresh, get a little food or snack, and then head off to classes if you have classes for the afternoon or any other engagements.
Thank you. Just a little reminder, you are the change. Even showing up today and consuming this information makes us feel hopeful that we're out here doing the work and we're all learning together. So I really appreciate you all coming today, and I can't wait to see the changes we make in the world. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Have a great afternoon.